dollars is spending with respect to other years. What was GDP? By most metric except inflation, the economy was doing great.
PTR.
Right?
Well, what I was going to ask was on Biden's way out the door, and when he was partying, wasn't Comey pardoned as well?
I think you're making this far too simplistically.
Or misunderstood that. I know there's a lot of people getting pardoned, convicts and a whole bunch of bells and whistles. I thought Comey was pardoned as well.
Savings,
did anybody agree with me on that?
I think Comey was pardoned for sure, not by Donald Trump.
It was stave off the recession.
An innocent man.
Or
that's what I was going to ask.
He put $1 trillion.
Don't you have to commit a crime or be accused of a crime
the right move.
to be pardoned?
Staved off the recession.
I was just curious about that.
Daryl, what would you have advised him to do? You're an economist.
Well, it's weird, right? Because I've always made this argument that
this last go round
we have a population that grows
Schiff,
faster than economic output, right?
Government.
If we go back to when Bill Clinton was president, I think it was 204 million people in the country. There were people who remember his presidency.
Yeah, he was going through the yellow pages when he was targeting people. I just don't know.
Since the Great Depression, we've added 10 million people to the population every 10 years, but we don't increase economic output for every human being. Have any of you guys heard the term economic stressor? If you have, I'll shut up. But if you have,
how can you harm someone if they committed a crime?
Is an economic stressor, right? So every human being
I thought you had to
needs a
commit a crime
doctor, needs a
to be
police
pardoned.
department, needs a fire department, needs someone to respond. So every
do get me on this whole subject of pardon, because it's the one thing. If I were to change our constitution, that would be the first thing I would change.
We have increased our increasing our population,
because it's
we are not matching economic output for the increase in population. We have 11 states in this country.
There was a reason that the king needed to pardon, or that the Lord needed, the Lord of the Manor, or whatever, the fiefdom had to pardon, because they weren't in control of what was happening.
They started talking about this on Wall Street in 2004.
It was just a different time in history, and why we brought that
we're not raising enough money through
our system, and
tax, so we have to sell
it embedded in the Constitution. I'm not sure, but this concept of
we need to figure out how to do.
I'm looking now on what he called it, but if I recall, it was like a blanket pardon for any potential charges that could arise out of their role in
money.
Yeah, see, I take serious
issues with that.
I work with state government in Louisiana, and the GDP of the state of Louisiana is roughly between 44 to 46 in the rankings, and the wages, and the medium wages are 48 to 49.
I think it has something to do with statutes of limitations, right?
Louisiana is that the majority of different crimes.
The liquefied natural gas, the majority of the country's liquefied natural gas goes through there. A huge chunk of the petroleum processing, like refineries, happen in Louisiana, and tons of the economy goes to the Mississippi, but that money never goes into the hands of people in Louisiana, because all the ownerships and the corporations have moved in the last 40, 50 years to larger states. Often their headquarters have moved to Texas, and their headquarters have moved to New York.
Someone correct me
so you
if I'm
say
wrong
that
on this.
Louisiana is like a free situation.
I didn't say anything about Louisiana.
But my point is, people will put states into this bucket where they're dragging down the country and they're taking more than they can do. But the reality is that often
he did his brothers. Didn't he do Frankie and Jimmy?
Don't control their resources anymore, and their ownership lives in other places. They moved to somewhere like Todd, where they're in Newport Beach and their headquarters are in Silicon Valley or wherever on the coast. But all the work and all the natural resources that are being extracted are happening in a place where people are poor. And it drives me crazy.
So then what you're
like
saying is, hold on, so what you're saying, this is me asking.
That would be
right?
the
So
just,
what you're saying
but it's a
is,
preemptive pardon,
Louisiana's
right?
economy is natural gas. Is that what you're saying?
Good.
I'm really asking you a question.
It's more than this petroleum, it is tourism, it is the trade down the Mississippi, the ports.
Even if it
Like
had the
there's
appearance of
tons of money that goes through
political.
Louisiana.
So,
It's midway in the rankings.
I mean, the most
for
famous
states in the
one,
US.
Big
But we're
Brigham,
49th
is Nixon.
typically in wages,
Right.
and it's
So,
because
I mean, that was a
the money
preemptive pardon.
Exactly.
out that
You and I
state.
are on the same page.
And so, like,
Right.
people are like,
I
oh,
just,
Louisiana's
again,
a drag on the
I've
economy,
argued this
but
before.
really
I just think
not.
it's
just that the
one
people
of the
there
worst
aren't being
things
paid,
in our
that the
Constitution.
corporations are taking the money.
And I think our founders were brilliant, but I don't really think they thought that one out.
Yes, I grew up in a refinery
And
town.
it's been abused
Are you
by all
unaware
sides.
of like the refineries in
Absolutely.
Louisiana and the
And
liquefied
as
natural gas
culture
and like the things that happen
evolves,
offshore there?
I
Like
think so
it is
too.
I am
one of the
aware,
biggest
yes.
energy producers in our entire country.
Because
So then
there was a
what's
point
the
in
problem?
time that it probably was
Like
being
I've
used,
already told you, the ownership,
culturally
like the
It
oil
really
companies
is.
and the energy companies
Well,
are now,
first
like,
of all,
I'll
be
use an
clear
example.
that
Freeport
it's a
McMoran.
federal
It used to be
pardon,
based
so it's not
in
for any state
Louisiana.
crimes.
Now it's based in
So
Austin,
that's
Texas.
really
Like
important
that
to
happened
make
in
that
our
distinction.
lifetime. A lot of like
And it's
Chevron
not
had
for
bought up
future
all the
acts,
oil
it's for
companies
past
that used like
acts.
Amoco and all these companies that used to be doing business in Louisiana. They got bought out
But
by
it's
what
companies
if it's
based in
past
Texas.
acts
So
that you
then
get
you
in
look at
charge like
Texas,
that?
or they've been
Yes, that's
bought up
exactly
by
why.
So like
based out of
Trump
New
went
York.
crazy
And then
at
you're
the
just
end
like,
of his term,
oh,
and he pardoned
Louisiana
like
doesn't do
50,000
nothing, but the
people.
reality is those companies
Can
were
he be
sold
challenged on
by
that?
baby boomers and generations before.
Not under our Constitution.
It's
It's a sweeping power pardon. I'm telling you, if I were to do a new amendment to the Constitution, that would be my amendment.
Known as a refining,
Well, it seems that the caveat is
and you're saying
that
stuff moved
both
to
Biden
Texas,
and
right? So
Trump have
did
pardoned
they move the
people,
refineries?
No,
Where does it go? Though is what I'm asking.
in ways that
So
benefit
when you
them
look at
ultimately, and so
the-
I don't know how
the taxes of the wealth that
you,
people talk about, like,
amend
oh, ExxonMobil made
amend
X number of
things
dollars and their
because
headquarters are
amend the
XYZ,
Constitution
or many of the
pardon,
plastic companies that are based in major
process
cities,
because
they're
Take it away,
actually being made
Jordan,
in
you just amend
Louisiana.
the Constitution
Then
with
you're
an
just like,
amendment that
Louisiana doesn't do
eliminates
anything,
the power
but
of
that's
pardon.
because the
But what
majority
about
of the wealth that comes out of Louisiana are going
was
to other
only
places.
dedicated to
That's the
Okay,
point.
so where's the labor is what
like,
I'm trying. Maybe
not
I wasn't asking it
relatives,
directly. Where's
not,
the labor?
you know,
Labor has
people who are incarcerated
talked
or
about this ad nauseum for the last
or
hour. Labor
liberating
has-
people from
wages have
incarceration
stagnated for the last
on federal
40
crimes.
years
Or
since
does that not-
Reagan. Is Reagan's
is that
fault?
not,
Basically, like
is
labor
that
has
too
stagnated
restrictive?
for that long. So like all capital
Or
has
Abby,
been
you're
flowing
saying get
upward.
rid of
That's
that
why
even.
the top 1%
I'm just
of our
saying
country keeps on
it's-
getting
it
wealthier and
doesn't
wealthier.
It made sense
that's where
in
the
its
money's
time
going.
in English history when the crown
My dad just
was
retired
not
from a petrochem
monitoring
company
and
in
aware of
You know,
what
my friends are
the
still working at petrochem companies
magistrates
in
were
Louisiana.
doing
But like
in
the
the different
petrochem company that my dad used to
fiefdoms
work for
around
got bought out
England.
by a German
It made
company and then
sense.
got bought out
Go
by an Indian
read,
company.
I don't know,
And then
Grok
like
or
if you're trying to
Google, or
measure
just
like
read the
the wealth
history
out
of
of Louisiana,
pardons
it's
and
like
where it came from.
it's not there.
It doesn't make
because
sense.
The money's outflowing to
You know,
one country, but now it's like I think
Our legislate,
the Zell's
excuse me,
based
our
out of,
executive
I don't
branch
even know anymore.
is
I've lost track.
is
But
aware of what our
that's
judicial
the
branch
problem.
is doing.
Sometimes when you label these states
And we
as
have a justice department,
drags,
and it just
you're not
it,
looking
it
at the
doesn't
resources that come out of the
historically
state
it
that
made
generate
sense, but
wealth
to
for
me I don't see it
ownership
today.
elsewhere.
Someone argue with me and tell me that I'm wrong.
So I can see certain contexts where it could make sense in one-off situations with
I'm actively
people who were
reading up
convicted
on
of criminal
Louisiana right now, so
charges,
you guys
but
can
the
just
criminal
ignore
charges
me for.
that they were convicted of are no longer
I mean, Daryl, what?
popular.
Let's say,
I-
Daryl, you're
like-
one of the smartest guys I know.
Or
right?
if
Thank you,
there's
sir.
a
If you
murder
were president,
conviction and the
what would
murder
your executive
conviction
agenda be?
had evidence that was very disputable, but because the
a way
limitations
to
of the
use,
system,
like,
the person ran out of
large-
appeals.
I've been
I
to
know that
48
there
of the 50
exist other
states,
means for
meaning
them
I've
to
only
do
not
that,
been to
but
North and
having
South
the president
Dakota.
have
We
the
have
ability to commute the sentence is not
large
necessarily
areas
an inherently
where
bad
there's
thing.
just
But
nothing
if you
happening.
have presidential
if we want to talk about bringing back
powers
things like
to
manufacturing,
issue
if we
pardons
want
like
to
that, or
talk
to issue
about,
clemency or whatever the hell you call it,
you know, China is
I
the
think
world's manufacturer,
there need
right?
to, at a
Apple
minimum,
makes
be
its
restrictions.
iPhones.
For example,
And
not being
you
able to
have
pardon
people,
members of
like,
your immediate family,
in
and not
factories
being
where they
able to
put up
pardon members
suicide
of your
nets.
administration
And it has
for
not
crimes that
impacted
they may have committed
Apple selling
through
phones,
the
which is, why
through
we
the
talk
course of
here
their
is talking about
capacity
the
as
jobs
a
that
member of the
Americans want to do
administration.
and don't want to do. The truth is,
There have to be some levels of checks
we
on it
become a
because it's
society where
proven
we
itself
want
not to be
things
balanced.
cheaper.
I disagree with you
We want
because
cheap
if new
goods.
evidence came
We
out in a
want
case,
cheap
you could
products. We
seek
want
a
cheap
new
materials,
trial.
and that's
You
why
can
China
can
became
motion
the
the
world's
court based on
manufacturer.
new evidence. Our legal system
I think
enables
that
one
we
to
need to go
go
through like a really
through the
hard
process
period where
when
people,
a circumstance like
Americans
that
are just going to have
comes
to
out.
get
Look
used
at
to higher
Biden,
prices
not only
in
pardoned but
relation to
commuted.
higher
He commuted
wages.
37, was it 27 or
It's kind
37
of like,
death
people
row?
knock Hillary
People
Clinton
that were
when West
cop
Virginia, the coal
killers,
mines were
children
closing, right?
killers,
Hillary said,
that he commuted off of death row
That was
their
dumb.
sentences because he didn't believe in the death penalty. So, so you'd have to also look at commutations as well, and then governors have pardon powers
obviously know how to
as
work
well.
with
I mean,
their hands
then,
to build
it's on a state level
components, to
different,
build phones, to build
but
things.
just generally,
You
you
know what I
would.
mean? It's like
Maybe you
we
need to
just
fine
have
tune
all of this
the legal
untapped
process of appeal
land
and
where literally
with respect to
nothing is
something like new evidence.
and people
Yeah.
will say, well, what about
But, I
farmers
mean,
and what about
Him
this?
disagreeing with the death penalty because of his
If
religious
agriculture was so
principles,
great,
that could
why
be a
don't we
whole case in
subsidize
itself.
farmers to the
But,
level
What
that we
was his reason?
subsidize
Did he
them?
ever give his reason
You know,
for?
Well, he's a
just think,
Catholic.
like,
The Catholics don't believe in the death penalty. It's
have more people
inadmissible according to
than we have economic
tax
output
and
for it,
dignity.
and I think America really needs to figure out how to be
Is that the
profitable
position of it? I didn't know that. That's the position of the
not.
Catholic Church?
No,
Yeah,
it's
the
not.
Catholic Church.
Wait, there happens to be a Catholic
But
on
I also
stage.
think
Joe, is
Americans
it?
don't
No, it's
Americans don't
not.
want to pay for anything.
The
They'll
Pope
never
may
say
be
it, but they don't want to pay for it.
personally against it, but
They
he
don't wanna
didn't
pay.
really
People bitch about immigration,
infallibly
but
that
if you
this
had
is
to
a
go
doctrine
and
of the
blueberries
church,
were
and you
like
must believe it.
$20,
It's not true.
people would bitch about that too. Americans are
In
just
2018,
bitching about everything.
Pope Francis ordered a
That's
revision
just
to the
my opinion.
Catechism.
It is not
We try to
a
bring
sin to kill somebody in the course of a crime.
Marshall, you're
Okay,
right.
for Catholics to
Bring 'em up.
believe in
I
capital
know, but I
punishment.
invited him.
Abortion, a different story, but capital punishment,
Yeah.
yes, you can.
But in 2018, Pope Francis ordered a revision to the Catechism in paragraph 2267 to formally state that the death penalty is inadmissible in all cases.
Title of the room is Donald Trump.
That's got
nuts? What
nothing
do
to
you
do
guys
with
think?
your faith.
Sure.
No, it's got nothing to do with your faith. I can believe in the death penalty, and I
You know what's funny about this?
Sure. I am saying that the church itself,
Here's my thing,
currently
right?
the
Who's really
Catechism
running the show?
says
Who do
that
we
it
really
is
think
inadmissible.
running the show? Like, we
And so
go
because it
from-
says that,
Susie
it
Wild
is reasonable for any Catholic to take that position.
And
While
we got
Catholics are, of
videos
course,
him
welcome to
literally
have their own
falling asleep
opinions.
in a meeting.
excellent,
To
good.
then
We
other
agree
people
on
saying,
that.
oh, no, he's
Excellent.
playing like 5
Abortion is a
chess.
different thing.
Which
I mean, and the way you characterized it, the way I thought Abby was taking it was, oh, well, the Catholics
Which one
believe
is
in
it?
the death
Right, did you
penalty, just
guys-
like they believe
Did you
in
guys see the clip
abortion
that they
according
tried
the
to
church.
to
Of
block
course,
where
there's
he
plenty
where
of Catholics that are
I
pro-life.
guess the
I
meeting
mean,
was
I mean,
over
pro
and then he
abortion.
says,
It
I
is
could
true,
use the
though,
good
that
shit,
the church
right?
itself
And they
is
cut it off,
actively
but the
working
word
to
is
end
out.
the death
I
penalty.
think Susie
Yes,
Wild
that's true. Yes,
is
absolutely it is.
really running the show right
So,
now.
like,
I
while
really
Catholics,
think,
sorry,
I
excuse
mean,
me,
maybe
I'll
it's a
amend my
combo,
statement.
but I mean, I think
While
she's
Catholics on an individual
exceedingly
basis
capable, and I
maintain
think,
the
you know, it's interesting, 'cause
right
it's
to have
chief of
whatever
staff.
opinions they hold in earnest,
she has kept below
the
the
church
radar.
itself does have these
Which he
opinions, and
loves,
different
right? He does not like
Catholics
to be outshown.
place
And I
different
think
levels of
I think
importance
she
on
is
what the
actually
church says, but the church says it,
managing
and
the
so
ship. I mean,
uh,
and you're right. There might
it's
be some Jared
a
Kushner
very
feedback,
easy
but I
hand
think
wave for
I
Biden
think
to
Susie
commute
Wild is running
as
the
many
show, and I think
death row
she's
people as he
know, I
wants
think
and say that it's simply a matter of his
you can
religious
trust her.
belief.
This is a great
fight, Brigham.
And
I'm
I
glad
think
that
she
we
keeps
ended
the
it
ship
in a resolute way, and we're all happy. And I agree with you.
steered
And back
straight.
to your regularly scheduled programming on Comey.
so I think
We've been on this
if he really is
presidential ability to keep sentences thing for the last little bit. We talked about Comey in probably about half an hour.
I just got here. I thought that
I struggle to understand the argument that
Comey getting,
he's just this fucking greatest thinker, and then at the same time they're calling for the 25th Amendment.
But anyway, I'll go back to the listings. I usually don't jump in right off the bat.
Is he crazy? Or is he crazy as fuck?
No, I know.
Which one is it?
Yeah,
Yes, and I should have spoken more precisely, not said Catholics or the Catholics, and specified that specifically I'm referring to the RCC as an institution.
I don't know if you play poker, right? Like, sometimes you win hands, and I think that's how Trump is.
Brother,
I think
we
he
still
loses
love you,
more
my
hands
guy.
than he wins by far.
No harm, no foul.
But he wins some big hands.
I'm a big fan of Catholics.
And I don't think it's
as individuals and as an institution, I'm a big fan of Catholics.
skill.
So am I.
I just think once in a while,
Doesn't the Catholic Church accept the Old Testament?
at the poker table
Am I
and wins
missing
some big
something there?
hands.
They do.
So we like
God,
it. For me,
God
right?
does
It's
allow
like,
the
so
killing
I've got
of
a former
enemies.
CIA buddy who lives in New York.
So
I don't know. I'm not a Catholic, so I don't know
the
how.
CIA is everywhere. They're not just like
I can
running
speak to
clandestine things. The
Sometimes
CIA
you gotta,
owns
sometimes you
companies.
gotta,
The CIA is
you gotta defend the wolf
involved in
away
a lot
from
of
the
shit, right?
herd of sheep.
And so
Sometimes you gotta do what you gotta do, my guy.
they're in everything, right? And so it's
there's
like
a difference between the
we had
government
lunch the other day.
says
There's
that
stuff he will never
we
put in writing,
can and should
but he'll
execute
only
these
say like
people,
on the
and
phone,
God
like in
says
person,
that
and
it's
he
okay
says, like,
because
he just
these
doesn't
people are
think
deemed enemies.
that he's
No?
running things. He's like, because everyone
we have a whole
just said
war
that this
doctrine
conflict
that St.
with
Augustine
Iran
came out with.
was not
It was
winnable.
very popular. It still is
Everyone
today.
said,
And it's actually
every
very, very well
analyst said,
written. If you read anything on St.
You know what
Augustine, which
size
is
their
really
army
hard shit
is?
to read.
no.
I looked this up. I couldn't believe it. They have a
It is
bigger
my
army.
understanding
Yeah,
that
army. I thought you said armor. Yeah.
typical
yeah.
perspective of Christians with
Total
regard
number,
to
like,
the Old Testament
like
is
personnel,
that
yeah.
those are events of the
We have
past
about
and that Christ
900,000, 950,000.
as their
They
interpretation of the
outnumber.
word Messiah
No, I'm sure they're Keystone
has
a lot of them, but they have
made it so
bigger
that
army than we
Mosaic
do.
law no longer necessarily
Yeah,
applies.
it's
Yeah, but he's also fulfilled the promise
So
of
does
the
North
Old
Korea and
Testament.
China.
And then
I think
that's why
Russia
we
has a
went to the
larger
New Testament.
set on
Yeah, that's
forces than we
it was
do.
a very good explanation. Better than mine.
it's kind of like so.
Sorry, I'm also trying to cross-thread the different
this whole
branches
thing
of
about
Abraham.
the Strait of Hormuz, right?
The
Every
religion or
analyst
the
said, hey, if we do this, they're going to shut down the strait.
So going back to
And
pardons,
we do it. He does the press
You follow
conference, and
now
he said, "I never
why-
thought they would have shut
can
down
you
the strait." That
still give me a reason where
because every
it would be
analyst.
necessary to have that power.
They've been saying that not only
No,
military
that's the-
analysts, but economic analysts have been
I'm
saying that
against
since the early
bargains.
2000s, right?
Great.
Leave this little piece
And
of the world alone
I'm mostly
because
arguing
they're
for
gonna
the sake
they're
of
gonna go
argument
and try
because
to
I
shut down
already
the Strait of Hormuz.
showed my hand and indicated that
So
I
it
agree with you.
becomes
I
a
think that we
question of,
probably should,
And again,
at a
like
minimum,
a
restrict
month
the
ago,
fuck out of that power.
someone went
Excuse
into
my
the
French.
futures market
But,
and they put a $2 billion.
I think that
Sure.
there are
On oil.
arguments to be
He
made
comes
where
out
it
and he
has
says we've got a
practical
deal. And
uses
this is all
at the
public
very
record,
least.
right?
But
Can we at least go with the clauses? I mean, sorry for interrupting. I mean, I agree with you, Miss Abby. I think blanket pardons and other pardon in general has been abused on both sides of the aisle. But
and I think
they have benefit on the civilian side, like war fighters that were criminally charged. And they were pardoned, and so it really beneficial. I mean, it's gonna be hard to really put a good clause in there to justify not being abused. Sorry for interrupting you, Bridget.
How long can Iran do
I mean,
this?
you could have
But China
legislation.
has been.
Assume you don't have that
has been
power.
making
You could
payments
have legislation
against
that could
future
come into
deliveries
play
of oil.
that
So right now, the
would,
idea is that Iran is probably
reverse
sitting on $30
sentences
billion
of certain
in there,
people
I forgot
that
what
were
the
convicted, or
capital
of
fund.
people
So-
convicted
so
under
they were
what
saying that
was deemed a
before,
crime
where
at that time, and now it's not a crime.
Iran would,
So that
like, maybe
those
have
sentences
a
are
month
vacated,
before they
or
really started suffering.
what's the
They
what's the
now
words
think
not coming into my
Iran
head
can
when
hold out for
you're,
another 18 months
I'm
financially.
sorry, what?
Because China is
Not
playing
commuted,
like
but
they
all,
always
when
do.
they go away
Chinese
completely,
play the
when
long
they're
game.
As far
And
as
they are,
yes, thank
they
you,
have been
thank you.
making future payments.
And you could have circumstances like that where you'd have legislation that would cover it.
I think it was Friday.
And I
hey,
understand
you know,
if
like,
something was considered
we can't
criminal
have,
and
China
then
is the
over
world's
time
manufacturer,
has become,
and China needs that oil to manufacture.
accepted,
And
then that might make
the
sense, but you
Chinese
could
are
cover it
starting
with
to say to
legislation.
America, hey,
I don't know. I just think we're really
you're
limited
causing a bigger
pardon power
problem than you
in
think
those
you are. They
circumstances.
actually say that
Another one
if this
that
goes on for another
occurred to
3
me
weeks,
just now
like the fertilizer supply in this
is
country
just the very
is going to hurt
simple
us for
fact
3
that
years.
law is general
I
and
don't
justice
think
is
that
particular.
Donald Trump is the guy who is taking in all of this
I think
information
that still
and making
holds true. You
decisions
know,
based
Congress
on
writes about
someone else
statutes
is
and
making
prosecutors
these
charge
decisions,
under
and he's either going along
imperfect incentives and then
or they're
judges
just putting him
sentence
in the
within a
chair
framework that may
and making
later
these
look
decisions.
excessive,
What do you think,
outdated, or unjust.
I would argue a broad statute
people like
is, if it's overbroad, it's unconstitutional, it's gonna get challenged. So you can't write too broadly.
You've heard me
Sure,
rail against
but some of them still
executive
are.
authority. I don't like it if it's
Right.
Republican. I don't like it if it's
well, you
Democrat.
know, it's not criminal, but in the civil
but I
realm,
do
you've
wanna
got
pass
Chevron,
maybe
and
y'all-
Chevron
y'all,
is
I do have a
exactly
question
why
for you.
that happened.
What
It
genocide
was
is he
overly
funding?
broad and gave the APA too much leverage,
I saw that.
latitude.
I'm
rather.
curious.
Yeah. I feel like a commutation allows the constitutional system to acknowledge that the conviction may stand, but the punishment has become too harsh. Which I think is important in areas with mandatory minimum sentences or
Like a pot, some people were charged with pot crimes and now pot's legal.
yes,
But you could do that by statute.
true. You could, but statute is also
that's all. Well,
notoriously more difficult to do, and sometimes you've got a situation that's a little bit more urgent than that.
I don't know. I broke this down the other day. U.S.
I know of a pardon. I'll tell you a story of someone I know.
Yeah.
It's a famous person here in
like
Vegas.
funding Israel.
So he owns,
a year.
or his family now are the heirs to this. He owned the newspaper in town and other
a high year. It's
big,
between
90 industries, very, very prominent developers, etc. So in the 40s, after World War II, he was involved in getting arms over to Israel for the War of Independence. And there was a lot of people involved with smuggling parts of airplanes through Czechoslovakia, through Panama, through certain countries, getting, the fuselage along with the actual airplane parts to build out airplanes to form an air force, and also getting guns over there to help them fight the War of Independence. Because he was here and this particular geographic area has some ties, had ties to organized crime, he was able to access and mobilize weapons and get literally boatloads of weapons through various crazy routes around the world in different countries. I think they even went through Africa up to smuggle into Israel.
And that's why
War of Independence happens. Obviously, the rest is history. They become a country. He was convicted back then of arms smuggling.
Some of the sanctions,
and
which is weird because they're going to use this
many
money
years
to go
later,
kill Ukrainians.
his son happened to be roommates with Bill Clinton
is not
in
making
was it law school or college?
unless it
One of the two.
does,
And
is
Clinton
the phrase I use.
pardoned this man
Something's
and
not
took
making
away his
sense
crimes
unless
and
behind
was
the
like,
scenes it's making
you know,
perfect sense.
50 years later or
All
whatever.
of these suspicious
But it was a pardon. It just made me think of someone I
oil
know that
shorts
was
right before
pardoned.
he comes
and
out
where
and says
the
we have a
climate
deal,
had
and then the
changed
Iranians say we don't have a deal,
and
but the damage is kind of already
it
done.
was,
Someone's made
what it was a crime back then
something
Viewed
doesn't make
differently.
sense unless it does.
Well, I feel like
I don't know if that makes any
I
sense.
feel like
that story, but
Hamilton's defense in Federalist number 74 is also a good one, which is, if I recall correctly, the criminal codes are necessarily severe.
5 seconds of
However,
silence, right?
without some easy access to
Bradford,
mercy,
good to see you, buddy.
justice can become cruel. And then
Conversation. Didn't
thus be
stage, but
against
I'll
the
couple
general
commentary.
principle
Where-
of, you know,
David, how you doing?
not invoking cruel and
This is a
unusual
good little room
punishments.
we got going.
So it boils down to the idea that a legal system needs to have a deliberately non-judicial mechanism for mercy because
A
courts
post he
are
made
bound
today
by law,
talks about how
as
proud he
written.
is of being 15th cousin to King
Bound by
Charles.
law as written.
If you go ask an AI
And
how
so
likely
with
you are to
the
be
court being
15th
bound
cousin
by
with
law as
anybody on
written,
Earth, that likelihood is about 100%.
there are
In fact, it's about
convictions that
100%
can
at
occur
8th cousin.
that
So
maybe the
congratulations,
people
Trump.
disagree with, maybe the president personally
Did he
disagrees
say
with.
he should go live in
And it
Buckingham
can be a
or
benevolent
something?
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
in
Yeah, at some point.
in a-
Yeah, I've always wanted to live in Buckingham Palace, he says.
hypothetical that I
So anyways,
think
but I'm probably
might
15th cousin with him
be
as well. The post, I have another post in my PTR, the one that he posted like 2 days ago, is him comparing,
let's say,
I don't know, some statue, I guess, that's important to Americans
takes it upon
under
themselves
Obama and under him. If you look very closely in his own post that he shared,
do a
the
little bit of
clouds are identical
vigilantism
in both
after
pictures,
their
right?
child
Perfectly identical.
assaulted.
It's a lie. It's AI
somebody.
generated. So that's 2 days and two stupid posts. And then if you go back 3 days ago,
Following the law by
no,
the
that's not
book,
true. If you go back about a week and a half ago,
they should
Donald Trump posted
be
an
sentenced
ad
and tried
on his own social media
their
for
whole
stake.com
thing and end
crypto
up in prison.
gambling.
But there's
So if you're not
room,
gambling
according
your
to
money on
law, for
stake.com,
them to end
are
up
you even American?
on death row,
And on that note, Trump is
just
nuts.
based on
It's funny though, right? Because they
circumstances.
said when Biden
And
left the
it
White
may be
House,
that
his net worth
that is a
increased by
deeply
just
unpopular
$2 million,
situation
right?
because of the situation.
In Trump's
because
first
of
term,
the
they said when he left the
detailed
White
work
House,
around it.
he and his family's net
Like
worth
I can
increased
think of
by
enough
$2
one-offs
million.
to
Whoa,
consider.
okay. So
It's
stay with that one. Someone else can
absolutely
chime in. I
insane.
don't have to be doing all the talking
Like
here, but
that-
you could mitigate that in
you
front of
can
a jury.
increase your net
You
worth.
can mitigate what
I'm sorry, go ahead.
the criminal intent was at the time and whether what the provocation and did it
And nobody
mitigate
does
some of the
anything
crime.
about
I
it.
mean,
You know, one of the things, if you
it
listen
doesn't
to King
mean because
Charles's
there's a
speech
statute
today,
and you committed
he's like, hey, man, you got
a murder
and
or
this is just like,
an act
you know,
of violence
summarizing. He said, you guys have 3 branches,
through the
and
process
it's
of a
supposed to be
jury
about checks and
or
balances.
a trial.
But it's
Some
like
of that wouldn't come out and
everyone has just
might
like,
justify,
you know,
not justify
given up
the
their
act,
authority.
but
and I just
mitigate is,
wonder, like,
is the
why?
optimal word. So I don't know if I agree with you, but I'm sure I'm boring people with this.
I was jump in for a second.
Go ahead.
You can then blame your elections for doing dumb shit.
I would say that in your example,
Right? It's
Brigham,
like it's a
there
rhetorical
is
thing,
an alternative to pardon.
right?
The
Why
judge
Congress
has
has
the
given
power,
up so much of
even
its
if the
prerogative.
jury is going
Because
to
it's
convict.
like easier to
They
get
give you a
reelected.
directed verdict. This is, hey,
You
jury,
don't
thanks
have
for showing
control
up. I'm
much
making
of
a
what you
decision
do.
that
When
is
you
not
don't,
the
when
same
you get
jury.
like
And I'm
ask
gonna
the
let
hard
person free.
questions on
So
the
there
card
are
and onto the
ways for them
executive.
to
Like
not
Congress
have to
is
pay the price for the crime
fundamentally
that they actually did, but there are
what
circumstances that
about
the
courts,
law
right?
can't
So the
deal with,
courts were
but the
always
judge
kind
can.
of, we are independent.
I
right?
know.
So
They set aside
So,
a verdict.
like, what?
historically,
But Abby,
yeah, you know, maybe, you know, you'd
have
have
you
conservative
ever
justices
known
and liberal justices,
other
but
attorneys to
it
provide
tended to be
effective
about the law and the Constitution,
Are you
right?
serious with that
And so
question?
it's,
right?
Yeah, of course.
Right. And have you ever just to get things wrong?